Hello, everyone. My name is Big Rich X. I am a variety streamer slash content creator, and today I'm going to be breaking down the Warriors of Chaos and the Lords that you can choose depending on your playstyle. If you enjoy this video, please be sure to like and comment, ask any questions in the comments as well, subscribe to the channel, and check out the links to see me live streaming across Twitch, Kick, and YouTube at any given time. Now, let's get right into it, shall we? First thing you're going to want to do is go to Immortal Empires. That's my preferred playing mode just because it is the biggest map in the Warhammer series. It combines the maps from Warhammer 1 and 2 and then some. So you just select Immortal Empires. You're going to be defaulted to the Empire. I will make a video about them soon. But right now, you're going to want to go to Warriors of Chaos. That's who we're focusing on right now. We currently have a selection of 8 different lords, all with varying play styles and things to choose. I personally, my 2 favorites right off the rip are Archaon, the Ever-Chosen, and Valkia, the Bloody. Main reasons is because they are heavy melee fighters, they're good in duels, and they're solid against clumped up units and infantry. However, we're going to break down each one. We'll start with Archaon and just go down the list. Now, Archaon, he starts in the Chaos Waste in the sort of northeastern part of the map. You're kind of away from a lot of the Empire and Dwarves and High Elves, your main opponents, which is Order. Your main goal, obviously, as Warriors of Chaos, is to build up renown or basically love towards a given Chaos God. Each Chaos God will give you different buffs, and going in favor of one god as opposed to the other might nerf you. With Warriors of Chaos playthroughs, if they're not dedicated to a specific god, such as Festus, or Vilitch, or Valkia, or Azazel, not Azariel, you have the selection of basically gifting settlements and renown to different Chaos Gods, which are the top 3 here. Archaon, I like in particular because he's also an incredibly good spellcaster, and if you want to look at his stats and some of his features that he gives to his armies and units and his faction in particular, please pause and read here. I like Kholek just because, 1, he looks cool, he's got cool voice lines, he's got a kick-ass flame horse, and his design is just really, really cool. But the main reason I like him, he is just a really, really solid spellcaster as well as a melee specialist. So while he's tanking, a clump of troops and fighting them, he can call in a flaming skull or a penultimate pendulum. If I check the unit and spell browser specifically, I can track him down on our lords list. And here I get a list of his stats and abilities. He's a spellcaster, armored and shield, armor piercing, and a melee expert. This is a very solid stat line. He's got really good armor, solid leadership. The melee attack is 70 and a weapon strength at baseline at 470. He also has flaming and magical attacks, so he can do damage to like ethereal beings and does extra damage against like wood, like dryads and treekin and treemen. With the flaming attacks. And flaming attacks in general just do more damage. But his primary spells, and you can see it on his abilities list, are the Searing Doom, Spirit Leech, Flaming Sword of Ruin, the Burning Head, my personal favorite. It's a giant flaming skull that's good at clearing out chaff. And then the Purple Sun of Xurias. Again, I'm sort of a noob at this. And then the Transmutation of Lead. So it's a wide spread of death, metal, and flame spellcasting. So jack of all trades kind of spellcaster, master of them all. Another reason why I really like him as a lord. So if you're playing the Warriors of Chaos, I highly, highly, highly recommend Archaon, the Ever-Chosen, as your first. Particularly because, 1, he's very strong. He can level up quick. And what I really like about these top 3 lords is they have access to the entire roster of Chaos troops. I mean, you saw that here in their unit and spell roster. So as Archaon, I can recruit pretty much any one of these troops that I like, so long as that I'm in the appropriate region or am feeding renown to the appropriate god. So if I'm feeding renown all to Khorne, I'm not really going to be using Slaanesh units too often because they're not going to be buffed as much as my Khornite units are. Let's move on to the next Lord of Chaos. And I'll break these up into chapters so you can skip to the Lord of your preference or choosing for the breakdown. Kholek, Sun Eater. The god of mountains, as you hear him see, is a giant dragon ogre. He wields a massive lightning hammer and is just an absolute beast on the battlefield. He's going to be starting fairly close to Archaon, so you can either choose to attack Archaon or Kholek early, depending on who you play, or ally with them sooner. Just really how you want to play things. What I like a lot about him is he's a big old beefy boy. And Kholek is just awesome to see in battle. He's a melee expert, obviously, so you're going to see him mainly trying to do damage to large infantry clumps. Luckily, with his size, he also causes terror, so you get that psychology effect on nearby troops. His main spell ability is the Lord of the Storm, which you get when you have his hammer. It's good against multiple combatants and is basically a lightning strike area. So if you're playing as Kholek and you're surrounded and you need to get out real quick, you just call in Lord of the Storm, and it should assist you. You also have Tempest Rage, which just gives a whole lot of buffs to damage and armor piercing. Kholek, though, not a spellcaster, so I wouldn't say as versatile as Archaon, but still a very beefy lord, has a lot of HP, and with certain armors and charms, or I should say, like basically the gifts you can get from Chaos Gods, like you can get different spells and like weapons, and I forget what they're exactly called, but you can call them in. Like it can greatly buff your lord. So just be on the lookout for the appropriate attachments when you earn them, either from your Chaos God or in battle, and you steal it from an opposing faction. Next is Prince Sigvald the Magnificent. Again, he's more closely tied to Slaanesh. As you can see, a lot of Slaaneshi buffs for his troops and his faction, as well as himself. I'm not a big fan of Sigvald just because, again, his starting army's kind of weak. Sigvald, compared to, all the other Chaos warriors of Chaos, is relatively weak. I mean, he has lower armor and a lower melee attack than Archaon, and definitely way lower than Kholek. He has a few abilities and traits, like Perfect Vigor is huge. It basically means he never gets tired, so he's always doing max damage, essentially, at least when we tie tiredness to it. He's fast and has a mortal blow that he can use. So you're going to use this guy almost like an assassin type character. You don't want him to be engaged in melee combat for too long because he can't really sustain it. It doesn't have a whole lot of healing. Has about a 40 speed, and I believe can get a mount, but you're going to want to keep Sigvald behind your troops, and mainly just being support. If you're going to get him involved in melee, don't send him into duel. Send him into support troops and taking out other units. But not really a duelist, and doesn't have a whole lot of spells to cast to clear out chafe of like lower tier units or clumps. So just be careful when you use Sigvald to not get him caught out in a one-on-one melee fight, because he will most likely lose. Next is Azazel. We're starting to get into like lords specific to a chaos god. Azazel is specific to Slaanesh. Again, Slaanesh isn't my favorite faction to play or be associated with. One, they're just weak and they're not typically that strong in melee combat. And I like melee fights and siege fights, and basically I'm a corn guy, plain and simple. So Slaanesh doesn't really agree with me, but they do have their advantages depending on your playstyle. This is about you, not about me. So again, if you're feeling like you want to just do hit and run type tactics, Slaanesh is for you. You're all about causing as much damage as possible, as quickly as possible, and getting out of there. Again, going to be starting up here. Same with Sigvald. Most of these chaos warriors of chaos will start in the chaos wastes and the really far northern reaches of the map. As we check in, getting a little mixed up here. Sorry about that. Again, you can see Azazel has a lot of Slaanesh ties to faction effects and lord effects. And if we go back to the unit in Spell Browser, track down Azazel, and this is a common trope amongst all Slaaneshi troops. Very, very weak armor, but very, very strong on the attack. Azazel has the ability to fly. He's a winged lord, so very mobile, very fast. Has 100 speed at default. So again, hit hard, get out of there. You do not want to have Azazel engaged in prolonged melee combat. Again, only 5 armor. He's going to be eating a lot of damage, and with only a 6,400 health pool, not ideal. Where you can utilize Azazel, especially with his speed, is his spell casting. By having a flying spellcaster off of spawn who has fast speed and is fairly tanky. I mean, granted, doesn't have armor but has a 6,400 health pool, can absorb a lot of damage. You can fly your lord in quick, cast your spells, and get out. So you can do damage initially while avoiding causing a lot of damage to your main fighting force. So your main goal with Azazel, similar to Sigvald, get in, cast with your spells, or hit quick and get out. Do the damage you need to do and get out. Azazel can cast a few different spells. We have the Temptator, which increases melee damage reflection and damage resistance by 20%. That damage resistance by 20% is huge. It's only 19 seconds, so use it sparingly. Lash of Slaanesh is sort of a breath attack, so it'll expand out in a tier shape. Again, good for clearing out multiple combatants. Hexes typically work in an area effect or can target one specific unit, so make sure you're targeting one of their stronger units, or rather, you're either going to want to attack one of their faster units like a heavy cav or their heavy infantry to bring down their melee defense and speed, so that your faster troops can hit them hard and then get out of there. Next up is Pavane of Slaanesh. This drops vigor, or adds vigor, and does damage per second. So again, target a specific unit that you want to weaken and also slow down, and also essentially nerf for the rest of the battle if you're making them tired. Most spellcasting lords will have like a damage buff as well, and that's Hysterical Frenzy, plus 25% to armor piercing and plus 40 melee attack. Again, only affects allies in range and maxes 1, so try to target one of your stronger units, or if you see one of your weaker units going down, try to boost them up so that they can do way more damage. So let's say you just have a unit of Chaos Marauders. You can now cast that ability from Azazel and give them plus 40 melee attack for a short time, which is huge for like a tier 1 infantry unit. They can cause a lot of damage in a short amount of time. Slicing shards, again, another area of effect. You're going to just want to hit big clumps of troops or a line of troops. Phantasmagoria affects all enemies in range. That's a minus 16 to leadership, and they cannot move, which is huge. So if you're trying to, again, hit a big clump of units, stall them, break their leadership, cause them to flee, Phantasmagoria is the ability for you. Azazel, just being a part of Slaanesh, has a few other buffs. They are demonic and they do cause terror, but again, you'll learn more about this as you pick them and play them And again, just going through the motions. We're going to Nurgle now. This is Festus the Leech Lord. One of the few lords that actually spawns near their main enemy. You're basically right in the heart of the Empire. You are going to be surrounded at the start by Empire and Kislev primarily, if my memory serves me right from this positioning on the map. Again, Nurgle is all about outlasting your opponents in battle. So you're going to want to focus on heals and spreading Nurgle's corruption. And you can see that in his Lord effects and faction effects. Again, very limited, but very powerful, especially being a devotee to Nurgle. You are very, very difficult to take down. You have a lot of healing and a lot of health as we check out our unit and spell browser. Starting off with 6,200. Again, Festus does not have a mount, is very slow with only a 33 speed and has a 6,200 health pool. When you're playing a spellcaster and a spellcaster primarily, the difference between, Archaon and Festus, Archaon has a lot of armor and is able to fight back. Festus is primarily a spellcaster. You do not want Festus fighting with your troops. You want to keep him protected at all costs and try to avoid having ranged units attack, because he can get taken down very quickly simply because he has only a 30 armor stat line. He does do magical and poison attacks, so when he is in melee combat, he can be somewhat effective, but you want to keep him out of melee as much as possible. Spellcasting is where you're going to need him. His spells will break down like this. A lot of them will do damage and heal you at the same time. Healing elixirs being one of them. Harbinger of Pestilence does damage per second to combatants but does not heal you. Stream of Corruption is a breath attack, again, good for hitting a long group of troops. Miasma of Pestilence, again, it's a hex, so it's going to you're going to want to. This is specifically used for cavalry primarily, heavy cav. It affects their charge bonus and melee attacks, so you're able to basically halt an attack before it hits, at least for one unit, which can make or break a battle, in all honesty. Especially in late game for higher tier battles, if you can stop a charge, at least part of it, it can save a lot of your troops. Again, another buff, armor plus 30 and melee damage reflection, so again, outlasting and protecting your troops as much as possible. And giving plus 30 armor is huge for Nurgle units because they don't typically have a whole lot. So, Rancid Visitations, it's good against a character, causes damage to combatants. Some spells are specific to a unit, some are specific to like a lord or hero, and others are to multiple combatants. This is all part of the learning process, is casting your spells at the right time and on the right unit. So just take your time in the early game to learn your spells, see how your play style is and who you end up picking. But Festus is a spellcaster, don't expect a lot of melee combat with him. It's all about outlasting. And again, Blight Boil, huge explosion area, clearing out chafe. And finally, Fleshy Abundance. That is probably the biggest and most used healing spell from any Nurglite faction, just because it is so powerful. I mean, heal per second is 1.6%. To compare that, heal per second for healing elixirs is only a 0.1. So imagine 16 times whatever healing elixirs does. It's huge. Festus the Leech Lord, fairly slow, heavy hitting with the spell casting, not a great melee fighter, so keep him out of the fight for as long as possible. Just have him casting spells. Now to my other personal favorite, Valkia the Bloody. Again, this is basically the complete opposite of Festus. You want her in combat, helping your troops, taking down high-tier lords and heroes. She is a flying lord and is a great melee fighter. She does not have the same spell-casting ability as Archaon, but is much more mobile and is dedicated to Khorne, obviously. Has a lot of Khornite blessings. So that's going to buff melee and buff attacks. Lord effects is the Gaze of Khorne. Right off the rip, It's a base weapon damage of plus 5%, armor piercing plus 5, and leadership plus 4 in a 35-meter area. So it'll affect every single troop and unit that you have in a 35-unit area. So she is a great help to your infantry, and that is the strong point of Khorne. Khornite units and typically Khorne-based factions despise range, so you're going to need to close distance quickly and disrupt their artillery and or ranged units quickly, and that's where you use your skull crushers and your warhounds and your other mobile units to let your infantry approach. You got to disrupt their artillery and range. If we check out her stats, we'll see a very, very high armor, solid leadership, a 95 speed, so slightly slower than Azazel, but that makes sense just because she's wearing more armor. She's an anti-large unit, so she will automatically get buffs fighting larger units. So if a lord is on a horse or on a flying mount, if there's a large giant or mammoth or whatever kind of creature, Valkia is so great at jumping around the map and helping out units and taking down higher tier lords and heroes, like I said. Does not have any spellcasting abilities off of spawn, but with a 54 melee attack with flaming and magic attacks with 400 weapon strength off the rip is very strong. Part of her quest battles is to get a demon shield and her spear Sleipnir. The spear Sleipnir has basically a chafe clearing ability that is sort of a column. So if you can fly in, cast the spear of Sleipnir on a line of troops, you can basically take out an entire unit or two with just one ability alone. So she doesn't have innate spell casting, but does have a few abilities late game. Her demon shield gives her 13 seconds of invincibility. So timing it right is everything. And it always comes down to this. It's timing. So learning your lord, how to play them, and how your play style is suited is incredibly important. And I'm just trying to give a breakdown as much as possible. And if you have any questions along the way, just drop them in the comments. I will be sure to reply to every single one of them. All right, that's Valkia. Again, my favorite. She is going to be starting in the upper quadrant of the map. Like, you are as far away from everything as possible, but this gives you a lot of chance to build up your armies before you get into sort of the main continent. You can build up a lot of armies. The main thing with Valkia is you have to take time to level up your troops. You don't get the same access as you do for some of the other Chaos Lords. The only way to get higher tier units, specifically Khorne, higher tier Khorne units, is by leveling them up through combat. I believe it's level 4 or 5 where you get the first upgrade, and then it's level 8 or 9 when you get the next upgrade you get Chaos Warriors of Khorne, and then you get the Chosen of Khorne. And Chosen units are extremely deadly in melee combat. So if you can get your troops leveled up enough, keep them alive in battle long enough by utilizing Valkia, they can become extremely powerful. And you can mess stuff up. Our second to last lord is Vilitch the Curseling on the far side of the map. Very interesting lore and has a very cool trailer. It's basically two brothers that were fused by Tzeentch. But on the opposite side of the map, you're going to be fighting the Chaos Dwarves and Grand Cathay. And he is a Tzeentch-based lord, as I was saying. Again, similar to Archaon, a great spellcaster and melee fighter, solid armor stats. They're 2-in-1, a brother spellcaster and a brother fighter. A very cool design as well. I'd say third only to Archaon and Valkia. But a very, very cool design. And again, if you want to read these, just make sure to pause the video at the appropriate time, just because I'm going to head straight to the unit and spell browser. Why can't I find him? There he is, Vilitch the Curseling. Fairly solid armor stats. What's cool about Tzeentch and Tzeentch units is pretty much all of them will have a barrier that is basically a small, basically health pool that will protect your hit points. For Vilitch, you get basically you can have 1,000 damage done to you and not lose any health. Not the strongest melee fighter, but can be sustainable in a fight if need be. Should be used more closely to like a hero type rather than a lord. Not going to be, the end all be all, but again, it's about the spells. Pink Fire of Tzeentch. Tzeentch is all about flames. You got Flamers of Tzeentch and so on and so forth, but that's another video. This is a breath attack, so it's going to spread out. It's good for clearing up chafe. Blue Fire of Tzeentch. This is good against large combatants. It's important to read these stats to see which spells work best against what. Next, we have the Treason of Tzeentch. It's a hex area. Will affect. It's a -16. That's pretty much the standard for hexes, at least when leadership is involved, is a -16, which is massive, especially towards an end of a battle and you're just trying to rout a unit. Glean Magic. It's a recharge ability, which is honestly huge. You can either take away from an enemy or give it to yourself. I would recommend just giving it to yourself because you're going to be needing as much spell casting and power recharge as possible. So, boost yourself rather than nerfing the enemy. Tzeentch's Firestorm. This is a small, randomly moving area of effect. So be careful when casting these kinds of spells because they can sometimes do damage to your own troops. Finally is the Infernal Gateway. This is a huge stationary effect. So again, if you have a large clumps of enemies in like a siege or land bridge battle, this spell comes in huge because it can clear out so many so quickly. It's all about placement and timing and using the right spells in the appropriate time. Last is a lot of people's favorite. I have yet to fully play him, but Bel'akor is kind of a subservient to the Chaos Gods, similar to the top three here. As you can see in his starting army, he has Khorne, Slaanesh, Nurgle, and Tzeentch all wrapped into one, and is all about just chaos. As you can see, just starts with Chaos God gift slots and Chaos all authority +2. It's all about chaos. And if we check the unit in Spell Browser, he's again a Flying Lord. Has a huge health pool of 9,300 to start. He's a demon or Daemon Prince, hence the huge health pool and stats. And you can see on his stat list, he's basically got the Ruinous Powers favored him the most and got a boatload. If you play the story mission, you can see how Bel'akor was created essentially. But again, very strong in melee and very, very scary to go up against in the early game because he's a very, very dangerous spellcaster and fighter and has a massive health pool, so it's going to take a lot to take him down, even when you can do damage to him when he's not flying around. So right off the rip, -40 to melee attack, one of his hexes. So again, good for disabling lords and heroes. If you're going in a one-on-one melee fight, you instantly drop their melee attack by 40, which is often more than half of a lord's melee attack. Shadow Shroud, again, huge. Damage resistance gets buffed to +60, so 60% of all damage coming his way just gets dropped. Melikoth's Mystifying Miasma. This is a very common Lore of Shadow spell. Strong against multiple units, reduces their speed and does damage per second, so good against cavalry and very fast-moving units. Enabling Foe, -24 to melee defense and -24 to melee attack, so good at taking down infantry and heavily armored units such as dwarves and high-tier Empire units. The Withering, -8 leadership and -30 armor. If you're just trying to get that final punch on some heavy cav or heavy infantry, Withering is a very good spell. The Penumbral Pendulum, one of the most commonly used Lore of Shadow damage spells, incredibly strong for clearing out multiple units. So let's say your troops are all in a line and you're about to attack, and then their troops come in and they attack, and you're all lined up fighting and going at it with their infantry. Or you're trying to take out their archers that are all in a line, which is very common for the AI or just players to do. The Penumbral Pendulum basically does a giant sweeping arc and can clear out multiple units all in one and does a lot of damage. All about placement and timing When to cast it and where to cast it is huge. Occam's Mind Razor, just a great buff for a singular unit. Plus 50 to base weapon damage and plus 50 to armor piercing, as well as magical attacks. That's good for breaking through barriers if you're going up against fellow Tzeentch, or going up against Tzeentch troops, or just magical units in general, such as, wraiths and banshees of the undead. Final spell is Pit of Shades. Again, a huge stationary effect, good at clearing out chafe and good at clearing out armor. So very, very powerful spell. Just, again, about placement and timing. I believe that's all of our lords. Let me know who your favorite is in the comments. If you watched until the end, thank you so much. I know this was a long video. I will break it up into chapters, like I said. Thank you again so much for tuning in to the channel. Please be sure to subscribe, share the video, like, comment, all that good stuff. And hopefully I will see you in one of my live streams. Maybe playing Total Warhammer 3, maybe playing something else. Either way, I hope to see you in there. Have a wonderful night. See you in the next one. Bye, everybody. So long. Bye-bye now.